Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to empower you by bringing guests and topics that will take you and your business to the next level. Today, I am very pleased to have as my guest Ann Carden, and let me tell you a little bit about Ann. She has more than 40 years of business, marketing, and sales experience, and over 32 years as an entrepreneur. She has built 7 successful businesses, selling off 5 of those, and is the current owner of 2. Her first business started out of financial hardship after leaving her corporate career and income to stay home and raise those kiddos. That first business went global before the internet and technology we have today existed, and was sold years later when she began her next small business. Ann has been coaching and consulting for the past 13 years and has worked with several hundred small business owners, consultants, coaches, and professional entrepreneurs in over 60 different types of businesses to further their success, and is also a 3-time published author for business, marketing, and success. And her latest book was a #1 bestseller, international bestseller. She has been a public speaker for over 40 years and is the host of her own podcast, Expert in You. She has been featured on the affiliates of ABC, NBC, CW, and Fox, among many other media outlets. Her articles have been published in Small Business Trendsetter, Shift Magazine, and Business Innovators Magazine. She has been a guest on multiple podcasts, such as Business Innovators Radio podcast, and can be heard at businessinnovatorsradio.com/Ann Carden. Ann was chosen as one of the top coaches in the world by Six Figure Coach magazine, and recently was honored to be invited into Who's Who in America. Through the years, Ann has educated, influenced, and impacted thousands of professionals through keynote speaking, workshops, seminars, programs, and digital platforms. Today's theme is going to be making bold moves in business, so please join me in welcoming my guest, Ann Carden. Ann, welcome to the show.
Hi, Vicki. Thank you. Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. And oh my gosh, you could have shortened that bio way down. That was way too long.
No, it was so good. You know, sometimes I do. I put the whole thing into my back end stuff, but I just thought it was really wonderful to be able to celebrate all the things that you've done. You know, some of us that have been around the block maybe once have, sometimes we forget all the great things that we did and how much of an expert we truly are. So I wanted to lift you up a little bit and
well, thank you.
I'll give you
and then
some
it's a little
accolades.
embarrassing when you hear it all back, right?
That's
no,
okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm sure it was not easy to accomplish, but definitely you got to be able to celebrate all that.
Thank you.
Please answer one of the easiest questions that I'll ask you today, and that is, where do you call home? Where do you live?
I am in Missouri. I'm right outside of St. Louis, about an hour outside of St. Louis.
Such a pretty area. So we talked about all those wonderful, great things that you did from a business perspective. But Anne, think back whenever you were just a young high school, college student. What was your vision of what Anne would look like and be like? You know, for me, I had my 5-year plan in my 20s, or teens. Actually, it was my teens. I had a 5-year plan. So what was your plan and how did that journey change over the years?
That's interesting. I don't know. When I was in high school, I don't know that I had a really solid vision. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So I went to college and did college for a year, and then that wasn't my thing. And I went to retail management school, and that's where I really stepped into the corporate space in retail business management. And that was actually going to be my career path. I was going to become a store manager. These were large department stores. My goal was to become a store manager or become a buyer. But then I had kids and that all changed. But I was in that industry for 13 years and worked in multiple stores, ran multi-million-dollar departments. And I learned a lot about business, marketing, sales in that atmosphere. So it was a really great foundation for what my next steps were going to be that I didn't realize were going to be. But I wish I could tell you that I had it all figured out. I did not.
So for me, I didn't go to college. I came from a very large family, and I knew college wasn't going to be immediately in my plan. It was a promise to my father that it would be somewhere in the plan, and ended up doing it at 47. But the interesting thing was that, you know, I had to have a plan because I needed to make money and I needed to pay my parents' rent so that my brothers could start to go to college and whatnot. So, yeah, so it wasn't that I was that much of a go-getter. It was the need. I had the need, and
Right.
that drove me.
Well, I always
So,
worked, even from
mhm.
little on, I worked and I always found ways to make my own money. And I had a job forever. So I always knew I would have a job and pay my bills and be on my own and be independent. But I just didn't have that career path really mapped out for a while until I got into retail. And then I thought I had it all figured out.
And it's interesting, there was a time when I started out where you did look at careers that it was your career you started with and you retired from. And it wasn't until some of my younger brothers started, they would change jobs like every 5 years. And I went 10 years at one company, and then my husband got relocated. And so then I had a 1 year while he was relocated and I was figuring out how to get there. And then I
Right.
spent 27 years at the next company. But it's interesting how today people don't think that way anymore. You know, it's just
No,
what's
it's
next.
very different. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
So,
think companies don't set people up for that either. I don't think that they don't even think long term for keeping employees long term. So it's definitely a sign of the way the times are, I
yeah.
believe. Yeah.
And I would say though that my 27 years, I had probably 10 jobs. In those 27 years, the company was large, and therefore there were other paths that I could take along the
Right.
way. I don't know that I would stay doing the same job for all
Mhm.
those years for sure. So share what exactly in this part of your journey in life, what exactly you do, and who is it that you work with?
Yes. So I work with really professional entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, authors, speakers, agency owners, anyone really that's in entrepreneurship. And I help them do a few things really. I help them 3 to 10 times their revenue. So that's sort of a little bit of the pitch. I want to help them get to that $1 million or beyond. But I do it in a very different way. So I help them build a really high-end premium business. So it's everything from their offer creation, what they're selling. So I help people get really high-end clients that are in the $100,000 range. I helped a client just close a $413,000 client. So they're working at in the really premium market. But then I also help them with all of the marketing piece, the sales piece, building their team, everything that they need to really hit those bigger goals and play in, I like to call it blue ocean, play in blue ocean, play at the top of their industry. So
Nice.
a very different business model from what a lot of people are teaching.
Very good. And so what are some of the mistakes that you had 7 businesses, sold a bunch of them. So what are some of the mistakes that you can share with us that you made building your businesses that will maybe help us avoid ourselves?
Yeah, I think it's important to really, knowing what I know now, it's important to really have a vision for what you want that business to accomplish. So many people get into business like, I'm just going to make some money, almost like creating a job for themselves.
Hmm.
And now I think differently, and I teach people to think differently. You can only create so much of a job for yourself, and why that is not freedom. That's also not going to make the money that you could make. I really believe that if you're called to entrepreneurship, there's something bigger for you. And so I think
Hmm.
that you should think bigger,
Yeah.
and just have a bigger vision, but know what that is, because that will guide and determine the steps that you take and the decisions that you make in your business.
Yeah, for sure. So think about the several businesses you have. What has been really the most memorable times? Maybe the last couple rather than going back too far, but in business, there are peaks and valleys and things. So talk to us a little bit about the most memorable times that you've had as being this entrepreneur, this business owner.
I Some of the most memorable times is when things really expanded. Like when I think about my first business, it was a creative doll business. And I took that business international before the internet. I was making over 6 figures in income a year. That was 35 years ago.
Wow.
I had multiple employees. I was basically running a manufacturing company out of my home. But originally, that business started to help my family to make a little bit of money. But then I kept growing it and kept expanding that. But I'll never forget the day that I got an order from Iceland. And now, again, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have the computer. But I remember I got an order from Iceland. And when the lady called me, she said, I just wait for your dolls to come out. Her husband was in the service. And, you remember those memorable clients, right? And she said, my husband's in the service. I'm lonely and I just love your dolls. I just love them. And I wait for the next one to come out, the next design. I was doing all my own designs. And so I was shipping to Iceland. That was such a cool moment in that business. So I won't forget that. Some of the others I can remember is in the 2008 recession, I opened 3 more businesses. We put everything on the line and I opened 3 more, and other people were shutting down. That was a big, scary thing to do, but I really felt like it was what I was supposed to do. That a lot of people pull back and they shut down in a tough economy or when the market turns, and I did just the opposite. That taught me a lot to do that.
Hmm.
But that was a real turning point. And that was also, I feel like I built that muscle, that fear muscle, and got beyond that, so that, gosh, there's always solutions. You can go bigger, expand, think bigger, do what other people won't do. And so there were so many lessons in that, but I still look at that, and where most people would have not done that, something crazy like that, and it was a bit crazy, I was able to sell all 4 of those businesses.
Wow.
And that was life-changing financially. So it paid off and I was not going to let them fail either. I mean, there was no way I was going to let them
Yeah.
fail. So that was a real turning point as well. There have been so many, but I would say those 2 probably stand out to me the most.
And the podcast is Find Your Leadership Confidence. And as I teach leadership and speaking to people, I always talk about the fact that you have to really find the courage to take that risk, to
Yes,
do what your gut is telling you is the right thing, where everybody else may be telling you you're crazy. And that courage then molds into that confidence for sure.
it does. And also, the more you do that, the more confidence you'll build. The
Oh,
more
yeah.
confidence you'll build in your decisions, in your decision making. Even if something didn't quite turn out the way you thought or the way you planned, it doesn't mean it failed.
Right.
how can you even shift or pivot that? But if you don't ever do anything, you're never going to get anywhere, right? So
That's
no,
exactly right.
yeah, and I believe you should lead your business, not just lead your people, but lead your business, lead yourself. A lot of people don't lead themselves.
Hmm.
And I think that's such an important part, whether you're in a company or whether you are in entrepreneurship, you are the leader. If you realize that, and you realize that everything that happens is because of you, good and bad. I mean,
Yeah,
that's just the way it is. So
that's a good thing to remember for sure. So whenever you traveled through these things, you talked about the things that are most memorable. We talked about some of the hiccups, but were there times as you were going through the 2008 or any of your businesses where you thought, I should maybe I should get out of this now?
yeah, you go through those moments a lot. Actually, when I made the decision to sell the first business, I sold the designs for that business. So, I mean, I sold the merchandise, but I also sold the designs. And I saw that business turning and changing.
Mm,
And I knew that it was time to actually, I first went into selling patterns. So first I was making all the dolls. I was shipping all over the country. I was in multiple stores, shipping all over the world. But then I saw the next thing was, okay, patterns, having patterns that, really you're just reproducing those, right? So
exactly.
the design's done. So that was the next revenue stream that I did in my business. And I worked with a manufacturing company that sold patterns and had pattern catalogs and all of that.
Mm,
But but I didn't love that piece of it, to be quite honest. It was pretty boring. And it was just a lot
yeah.
of packaging patterns up and that kind of thing. And so when I saw that I couldn't really make the dolls and really have the business that I had and was super passionate about, I knew the market had changed and it was time to get out. And that was when I made the decision to sell my designs and sell the patterns that I had and move on. So that was a big eye opener for me. As
And
far
I
as the
think,
other,
oh,
oh,
I
go
was
ahead.
just going to say, I think a lot of people need to hear that because, as entrepreneurs, a lot of things that we start with, that's our baby, if you will.
Mhm.
And, and we really sometimes have blinders to when it is time to move on.
Yes. It's hard to do because you birth this thing
Mhm.
basically and you put everything into it, blood, sweat, and tears, right?
Right.
And I remember when I sold my first two, so I sold a health club and a weight loss center. Those were two. And then I had two more of those. But when I was selling the first two, because the other two I wanted to put more time into, that was a really, really hard decision, even though the money was great. And it was, but I had just built this up from nothing, teaching fitness
Yeah.
classes in a community hall to a huge health club that was number one in the community. And,
Mm,
and the weight loss center. And I had helped, thousands of people. And it was really hard to sell that, but I was also of, I was really tired of it.
hmm.
And that was but and this is a good lesson for people too. I actually sold those two right coming out of the recession, coming out of the 2008 recession. And had I sold those at the peak, I would have made even more on that. But it was going great, right? So I didn't want to sell it. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
this is phenomenal. I want to keep this going. I want to keep building and expanding. Well, then the recession hit. It was still doing really well. And I opened up the other businesses. But that was a lesson that
Yeah.
when things are like on the high, that's really the time to get out. It's not,
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the hardest time to get out
Yeah.
because that's kind of
That's exactly right.
what you've been working for, right? To get it to
Hmm.
that point. So just kind of a lesson there, but yeah.
That's a very good lesson too. And and I think also, you mentioned dolls and patterns and health and fitness. I know one of the coaches that I had, because I have an anti-aging and wellness business, and I have a speaking business, and I have my podcast, and and I teach leadership. And so they're like, well, you have too many things, but it's all interrelated. But
Sure.
sometimes it's not. For mine, it's all interrelated. Like you won't go on screen if you feel like your skin is not great, or you won't be great as a speaker or trainer if you don't have energy. So it is all interrelated. But dolls, patterns, health and fitness don't appear to be interrelated. But I think it's okay because you mentioned that you lost the passion, and if it's not fun to do, I think it's time to get out.
Well, and I didn't do them all at the same time. So the doll business was first. Actually, what got me into the fitness part was I had gained a lot of weight in the doll business. And I knew I had to take better care of myself. So I started eating right and exercising, and I got in the best shape of my life. And I thought,
Yeah.
I want to help other people. And so that's where that all started. So God has always guided my steps, and he's always, given me the path and the direction that I should go.
Mhm.
And that was the same with coaching. I stepped into coaching because I worked with a business coach in my last two businesses, and it was such a game changer. And it was so phenomenal to me. I thought, oh my gosh, this is my next thing. And so now actually it's been over 14 years that I've been doing it. I need to update my bio there, FYI. But that was the thing that got me into it. And so now I was able to leverage all of my expertise and my experience and knowledge
Yeah.
and everything I had acquired through the years and be able to help other people with it. But I noticed I've always been in somewhat, everything I've done has been to help. It's always been to
Yeah.
help
Service.
in some way. Yes. And
Mhm.
that is, and it's no different now,
Yeah.
but my businesses now, I have my media agency, my
Yeah.
Expert in You media agency. So a podcast, I'm getting ready to release a magazine. So that's all getting built up. And then I have the coaching side of my business too, and I speak, but they're all interrelated too. I'm not out there trying to market myself 10 different ways. They feed each other. So it's pretty cool.
Exactly right. Yeah, the one coach tried to sway me against podcasting. Well, one, I love this.
It's
And
my
it is
favorite thing to do.
it
Yes,
is to me the best networking I have
it
ever
is.
done, because I have real quality time to get to know these people, so that when I am promoting or sharing with somebody to feed a need, I feel comfortable and confident to say that, you've got to work with Ann because this or that, as opposed to, other networking groups where I met her, she gave me a 5-minute pitch,
Right.
and I think she's good.
Yes. No, 100%. And also too, when you're like, for me, when I'm interviewing people on my podcast and I'm really diving into what they do, I can tell their expertise. I can
Yeah.
tell that they're good. They tell stories of clients
Mhm.
or of people they've worked with. And so you don't really have that kind of quality time with people at any kind of
Yeah.
networking. I'm with you, Vicki.
Yeah.
This is podcasting. It's actually a strategy I teach people
Mhm.
that work with me to get those really high end premium clients. So we use it that
Absolutely.
way. Mhm.
Absolutely. And as we go through all of these paths in our journey, people give us advice, good, bad, or indifferent. Share with us the best in advice that you've got for overcoming those challenges that are going to happen. Not might, may, they are going to happen. And so what was your best advice to date that you've received?
Well, I would have to say that it was in my last two businesses when I
Mm,
brought in that coach. And the reason I brought that coach in is I was in a brand new market, one that I was not familiar with, and I was having trouble. We were a high end club and a high-end weight loss center, and I was having trouble getting those businesses above
yeah.
break even. So I ran a good business inside. I knew how to run a good business, but I could not get the right people through the door, all of that. Well,
Mm,
actually, so when I worked with this coach, I mean, she turned things around in 30 days because she was a brilliant marketer. Not only was she a brilliant businesswoman, but she was a brilliant marketer, and she had been in Dan Kennedy's
oh,
program
yeah.
for many years. And so if anybody knows Dan Kennedy, so she had trained under the best and she
Mm,
was excellent. And that was the change for me to see, oh my gosh, I need to be a great marketer. I need to get great at marketing.
yeah.
So I would have to say getting that from her. I don't know that it was such advice as much as it was to open my eyes to, you have total control over your business. You have control over who comes through the door. I had to really learn that. But it also set me on a course to become a student. Okay, how can I really understand this? And then now I teach it to people and all of that. But I would have to say that was probably a real, probably some of the most valuable thing that I learned is when you can market and sell, you can have a business doing anything.
So for the last question that I have, think back, what has been the most pivotal transformation that you've had from a client after working with you?
As far as a client result?
Yes.
Okay. So the one I've had some really great ones, a lot of really great ones, but one that I love to talk about is this guy was referred to me from a past client, and he had been putting a lot of money and time and effort into trying to launch his business. And after 6 months, he didn't have any appointments. It wasn't going anywhere. He couldn't even get any interest in what he was doing. And I looked at he said, Ann, I have 90 days or I'm going to have to go back and get a job. And we changed everything. We recreated his offers. We took him from the $4,000 thing he was going to sell to $25,000. We changed his marketing. We changed his sales process. And he went out in a weekend, launched that business, sold about $80,000 that hit his bank account, and built that into almost $1 million in 1 year. So that was pretty
awesome.
cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Very, very much so. All right. Well, time has flown by. We could probably do segments on very different areas that we touched on today, but you just gave some great little tidbits of advice for folks. So I'm sure that people want to be able to connect with you. So as always, I will be sharing my screen that has contact information. If you're just listening, you can go to my YouTube channel, Vicki Noethling, to be able to subscribe and get all my podcasts, but especially link to this one, and go to findyourleadershipconfidence.com as well, where all the show notes will have everything you see on this slide. For those of you that are just listening, you're going to go to Ann Carden, AnnLCarden.com, AnnLCarden.com. On Facebook, you can search for her by her name, Ann.Carden.509. For LinkedIn, it is Ann Carden-business-consultant-coach. Instagram, again, you can search by her name. It's Ann Carden Consulting. And YouTube is her name again, Ann Carden. So basically, on social media, search for Ann Carden and you will find her.
Or you can Google me and you'll find all kinds of things. Yeah, you'll find it all.
And the reason we give you the website is she has all those links on the website that you can easily find too. But I'm going to turn it over to her to talk to you about her call to action for today.
Thank you so much. So one of the things that I'm always doing is running live workshops. I absolutely love to do that, pour into people, help them, really help them in their business. So you can go to expertinyouworkshop.com, and that is always a free virtual training that I do. So you can get in on that next workshop if whatever I'm running at that time looks like a fit. And yeah, that's something that is just super, super helpful for people. My workshops I could charge for. I've had people say, Ann, you could be charging thousands of dollars, but full transparency, I get a lot of clients through my workshops. So I do offer them for free.
And is there any social media that you spend more time in than others?
I'm on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my main platform, and Facebook, but LinkedIn is where I play the most. But YouTube is where you can find a lot of content. So if you really want to look at content that I have out there, YouTube would be the place to go.
Awesome. Well, Ann, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you. I knew I would love having this conversation. You did not disappoint. I
Thank you.
hope if you're ever in Georgia, that you'll come and say, hey, we can have coffee together, share some great stories of things that we've done, and keep being of service to others. I think it is wonderful, all the things that you do.
Well, thank you so much. And it was a pleasure being here and getting to know you as well. And I appreciate the time.
You're very welcome. And as always, I remind everyone that life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.